Developments now from the Target 12 investigators in the Conjuring house controversy. The famous home and its owners have been in hot water after the town did not renew the business entertainment license last month.
Target 12 investigator Sarah Grinelli is here now with the details.
A Rhode Island home where a family's tranquility was disrupted by invisible forces and where murmurs became screams, the stuff of nightmares for decades. It was known as the Conjuring house for the paranormal investigators who sought to unravel its mysteries. Horrors were distorted by Hollywood. However, something sinister lurked under the surface of mythology. Finally, the riddle has been solved, and what was revealed? It's much more disturbing than anybody anticipated. Ghost stories aren't what this is. This is about lives that fell apart, about trauma that stays with people, together with an immutable power. The spectral presence persisted. Over time, it changed. What about the true terror? Maybe it was always just ordinary. Harrisville, Rhode Island's old Arnold estate, had a gloomy reputation long before The Conjuring was ever filmed there. The colonial home, which dates back to roughly 1736, bore witness to several tragedies throughout the years. The property has been linked to several documented deaths, including multiple self-inflicted hangings, multiple drownings, a poisoning, and 4 men who allegedly died of frostbite. The disturbing example of Mrs. John Arnold, who purportedly committed herself by hanging herself in the barn at the age of 93, stands out. Despite their historical documentation, these occurrences instilled a sense of foreboding surrounding the estate, leading some to believe that the area may be cursed. The Arnold family has lived on the estate for 8 generations, making it an integral part of the area's history. The official documents and a long history of oral storytelling both contribute to the horror associated with the location. The distinction between reality and legend became increasingly blurry as stories were recounted, sometimes without supporting evidence or background. Critics contend that the alleged pattern of bad luck could just be fortuitous or inflated over time. There must be something worse going on behind the scenes, though, because these stories keep popping up, which is a big deal for believers and paranormal aficionados. The story of Prudence Arnold, an 11-year-old girl who was supposedly murdered by a farmhand after being is one of the most persistent urban legends associated with the estate. According to historical accounts, a heinous crime did occur. However, it was committed in neighboring Uxbridge, Massachusetts, and not on Arnold's land. Still, the farmhouse has been ingrained in local legend thanks to the many false accusations leveled against it. The distortion takes on a classic quality when it shows how disasters from other places may blend into the atmosphere of a supposed haunted place, especially when imagination and dread start to fill the empty spaces. Bathsheba Sherman, a lady from the 19th century who was falsely accused of witchcraft and infanticide and never tried, is another name that will always be associated with the estate. She was believed to have cursed the property and sacrificed her own kid to Satan, even though she resided in the neighborhood and not on the Arnold estate itself. Despite the lack of proof supporting these wild claims, the Conjuring film only served to heighten their impact. Over the years, Bathsheba's tale became legendary, if not more so than the woman herself, and the most infamous ghost story of the house. A location so tarnished by actual tragedy proved an ideal incubator for folklore, mistrust, and dread of the supernatural. This story captures broader forces at work. The Perron family, 5 girls and Roger and Carolyn, moved into the old Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island in January 1971. The 8.5-acre property and charming colonial architecture of the centuries-old farmhouse drew the family in, and they envisioned a simpler, more peaceful existence there. The place appeared perfect, with its rustic charm and 14 rooms. But that ideal started to fall apart practically as soon as I settled in. At first glance, the peculiarities of an ancient home soon took on an eerie quality. The initial warning signals were faint, but enduring. Things about the house started going missing, only to turn up again in strange locations. Unexpected dirt mounds would appear in rooms that had just been cleaned, and Carolyn found her broom moving around all the time. Strange disruptions like these didn't appear dangerous at first, but they eventually shattered the family's routine and suggested that something invisible was interfering with their lives. As the occurrences got more regular and puzzling, any reasonable explanations, such as drafts, forgetfulness, or the house sinking, rapidly proved inadequate. Even more unsettling were the behaviors of Brevardou, the family dog, who was meant to be brave. Out of nowhere, he began behaving irrationally, snarling at vacant rooms in the home. Particularly in the vicinity of the basement, he flat-out refused to enter several rooms. As a rule, people believe that animals are more sensitive than humans. Their out-of-character terror did nothing except heighten the Perrons' already palpable terror. It had stopped being weird. The house had seen them, been observing them, and was now being assertive. As time passed, it became more apparent that a supernatural force was at work in the house. Whispers spread among the children as they reported seeing shadows, hearing voices, and discovering objects that moved on their own. The eldest, Andrea, described how, at night, she felt something suffocating, like an invisible hand encircling her. Even though no one was home, the once charming mansion started to seem stuffy as doors creaked open and footsteps reverberated down empty corridors. What the Perrons thought was a coincidence at first turned out to be the start of a haunting that would affect them for the rest of their lives. The Perron family felt the presence of benign, almost reassuring spirits in the first few weeks after relocating to the old Arnold estate. The subsequent dread was in sharp contrast to these formative events. Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April Perron started talking about unseen caretakers about the house. At first, these beings didn't seem scary or hostile. When it came to the kids, though, they seemed more like vigilant guardians. Everything was rearranged as if in a game or a routine, with no breaking or throwing of any kind. Whispers resounded across rooms, not threatening but inquisitive, and doors began to creak open on their own. Among the youngest girls, Cindy Perron, there was a consistent sense of being confined to bed at night. Before she recognized a peculiar, pleasant aroma, something flowery and unfamiliar, lingering in the air, she thought it was her mother. According to what Andrea Perron recalled afterwards, these ghosts didn't act aggressively, but rather out of habit or love. It was stated that one specific creature would rearrange blankets and kiss the youngsters goodbye, as if caring for them like a loving nursemaid. In the otherwise spooky and enigmatic mansion, these meetings brought about an odd feeling of peace, even familiarity. The Perrons began to feel as though they were living with pleasant ghosts of long-gone residents. Their children came to think of these specters as family. There was a strange domestic rhythm to the house quirks, like toys popping up and going away at random, and doors opening and shutting on their own. During this stage of the haunting, the focus shifted from dread to adjusting to life with phenomena. However, it just prepared the family for a more severe truth. This fleeting serenity could have been the most dangerous illusion of all. As time went on, something far chillier and more intrusive took the place of these spirits' warmth. At some point, Andrea would imply that something considerably more evil had taken over these harmless images. What the family had thought would be a peaceful cohabitation has instead become a rapidly expanding threat. The previous tranquility now appeared to have been the prelude to a protracted and terrible storm, portending nothing less than the beginning of a far more horrific tale than anything they had anticipated. An eerie discovery made by little Cindy Perron was one of the most terrifying parts of the Perron family's stay at the old Arnold estate. Cindy told her elder sister Andrea, "In the midst of the growing strangeness in the house, I have heard whispers, loud and persistent, saying, 7 dead soldiers are buried in the walls." The message was not nebulous or dreamy, but rather plain, unsettling, and extremely detailed. Unlike earlier strange occurrences, this statement seemed planned, as if an extraterrestrial being wanted its veracity to be recognized. The family's comprehension of the haunting was further complicated by the terrifying possibility that human remains were concealed within the home's construction. Immediate and significant emotional toll on Cindy. With her heightened sensitivity to the paranormal activity in the home, she started to isolate herself, consumed by fear and worry. After a while, Cindy started to have terrible nightmares, in which phantom skeletons haunted the house and watched her every move. Her siblings took note of her restlessness and started to internalize her anxieties as her anxiety level rose. Despite their best efforts, the Perron's daughter could not escape the nagging feeling that something long forgotten and sinister had taken root in their household. No documents, bones, or architectural abnormalities backed up Cindy's assertions, no matter how scary her admission. But the statement's impact remained strong. It got ingrained in the family's memory and was one of the most memorable and unsettling aspects of their ordeal. It became an important component of the house's supposedly haunted reputation in subsequent years, drawing the attention of paranormal investigators and storytellers. Regardless of its veracity, even doubters acknowledge that the statement's weight is due to its psychological impact. There is a greater folk tradition around the Conjuring house that the Perron family's story added to, beyond only the 7 soldiers' narrative. Given Rhode Island's closeness to historical battles and colonial heritage, the narrative provided just the right amount of realism to spark imaginations. Guests and ghost hunters still wonder if the home does indeed include long-lost skeletons. Might their presence be responsible for the eerie shadows seen inside? Although no remains have ever been located, the hushed murmur remains, subtle yet distinct. An iconic and sometimes misunderstood individual associated with the Conjuring house tale is Bathsheba Sherman, whose birth name was Bathsheba Thayer in 1812. The 2013 horror film The Conjuring gave her a horrific role as a depraved witch who killed herself after cursing the country and sacrificing her kid to Satan, making her name instantly associated with wickedness. Nonetheless, this depiction of Bathsheba is mostly based on movie dramatizations and legend rather than historical reality. Actually, she was the wife of a Rhode Island farmer from the 1800s who resided on land close to, but not on, the old Arnold estate. While Bathsheba was alive, the mysterious death of a baby in her care started the rumors that she was a witch and a child killer. The infant allegedly died from a puncture wound at the base of the skull, which led to rumors that she had sacrificed herself using a sewing needle, according to local mythology. Although her neighbors suspected wrongdoing, she was never officially charged. Still, the exceedingly superstitious community regarded Bathsheba with distrust and dread, and she became a social outcast as a result. Recountings that muddied the waters between fact and fiction contributed to her tarnished image following her death in 1885. The real Bathsheba, in contrast to her Hollywood version, had a tragically ordinary existence typical of that era. Many of her children from her marriage to Judson Sherman did not make it past infancy, but that was par for the course in the 1800s. Nothing points to her being involved in witchcraft, demonic rituals, or criminal misconduct. Most of the claims that she was a witch were made after her death, most likely due to morbid curiosity and local superstition. As time went on, the narrative got darker and darker, until the fabricated version became more popular than the fact. A symbol of evil cast to heighten the horror story, Bathsheba becomes less of a lady in The Conjuring. Though riveting on screen, it does a disservice to the real-life character whose tale was one of mistrust, despair, and perhaps injustice. The flimsy connection between Bathsheba and the Arnold estate has been painstakingly corrected by historians and local academics. Nevertheless, despite all the evidence to the contrary, supernatural tales and folklore sometimes take center stage. Whether or not the story of Bathsheba is true will likely fade into folklore. Carolyn Perron found herself horrified by the personal nature of Bathsheba's legend. The specter of this lady would emerge from tradition and into Carolyn's life. She would eventually come to believe. The family matriarch, Carolyn Perron, started to have the most distressing and intimate manifestations of the haunting as the bizarre happenings at the old Arnold estate became more intense. Things that started off as little annoyances, like lost items and unexpected drafts, turned into serious health problems. Carolyn would wake up on a regular basis with bruises all over her body, often in awkward spots she couldn't have gotten to while she was asleep. She frequently felt watched, particularly in her bedroom and the area surrounding the cellar, and her vitality quickly declined. Her family was concerned that something in the house may be influencing her deteriorating health, something they couldn't understand or explain. The most scary part of Carolyn's experience was her recurrent accounts of seeing a ghostly woman standing beside her bed, scowling and making menacing noises. Not only was this figure haunting the house, but Carolyn began to fear that it was out to get her. Some have speculated that it is the ghost of Bathsheba Sherman. As the frequency and severity of these midnight visits increased, Carolyn began to fear for her physical and mental safety. Carolyn seems to have intense, planned, and more malevolent experiences, in contrast to her relatives who had more generic interactions. Her thoughts and feelings were burdened by the experience. Slowly but surely, she became distant, easily agitated, and disengaged. The slight shifts in her demeanor, brought on by her exhaustion and depression, were horrifyingly genuine. As the rest of the family could feel the fear radiating from her, Roger's worry intensified. Carolyn was at the forefront of a conflict that nobody could quite make sense of. It was more than just a haunting. It appeared to be a siege. A sinister force seemed to revolve about her, drawing strength from her anguish and exhaustion. Roger Perron, who was desperate for answers, contacted famous paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. A strong, evil energy was directing its attention at Carolyn, according to Lorraine. The ghost was trying to possess or kill her, in addition to haunting the house, she said. The séance, intended to face the spirit, became one of the most infamous events in the Perron haunting after this discovery. Rather, it multiplied the mayhem tenfold. The haunting was never some impersonal dread for Carolyn Perron. Rather, it was a brutal attack on her body, mind, and spirit that continued to hurt long after her family had left the house. At the height of the Perron family's sorrow, Roger went to Ed and Lorraine Warren for assistance. The Warren family was well known for their association with prominent hauntings and had experience with spiritual warfare. Upon entering the old Arnold estate, Lorraine, a self-proclaimed medium and clairvoyant, felt an ominous, controlling presence, which she asserted was associated with Carolyn. The Warrens suggested an unpopular next step, holding a séance to confront and drive out the entity, as the family searched for advice and comfort. The family was in a state of frantic need for answers as the danger to Carolyn's safety escalated despite Roger's reservations. Because of prior disruptions, the farmhouse's basement was already an eerie place to have the seance. The intended controlled spiritual intervention descended into anarchy in an instant. The eldest daughter, Andrea Perron, defied her parents' orders and sneaked upstairs to observe the ceremony. From what she remembers, Carolyn had an aggressive reaction the second Lorraine started talking to the beyond. She started speaking a language no one could understand. Her manner changed, and her voice changed into an alien sound. The pièce de résistance was supposedly when Carolyn's chair sprang up from the floor and flung her across the room with an unearthly power. Roger was horrified when he ordered the Warrens to depart, thinking they had made things worse. Mental instability and injuries plagued Carolyn. After the séance, Lorraine Warren confirmed feeling something extremely wicked, but she remained silent, which only served to heighten the mystery and foster conjecture that not even the Warrens could completely comprehend or control the occurrence. Something had been released or aroused, and the home appeared to have transformed after that. The psychological harm had already been done, even though the subsequent disruptions were less obvious. According to Andrea Perron, the séance was the defining event that solidified her belief in the reality and threat of the entity. It was a last resort for the Perrons in their fight against chronic anxiety, but some say it was reckless and even predatory. Rather of providing a satisfying conclusion, it became a notoriously tense and talked-about part of the Conjuring house's backstory. One instance stands out among the other bizarre and terrible occurrences that befell the Perron family due to its disconcerting combination of innocent childhood playfulness and cold-blooded aggression. Cindy Perron, a little girl, hid in an old wooden pine box in the family's barn while playing a typical game of hide-and-seek. At first look, the box seemed secure, because there was no obvious lock or latch. However, the lid mysteriously slammed shut and would not open once she got inside. No amount of internal pounding, shoving, or screaming could free her. Until her sister Nancy located her and opened the box effortlessly, without meeting any resistance, she spent nearly 20 minutes suffocating in the dark, afraid, and alone. It was more than just a scary accident involving a youngster. It was a tragedy for the family. Cindy maintained that she hadn't completely sealed the box herself, and there was no technical reason for it to have sealed itself. The fact that no one had heard her screams for so many minutes was the thing that unsettled them the most. This moment seemed purposefully harsh, in a house already filled with unexplained noises, chilly drafts, and moving items. An harmless game had become a psychological trap for Cindy, as if someone in the house had decided to isolate and terrify her. Something about the house's ghost started to give the family the creeps. It wasn't just there. It was smart, crafty, and unnervingly cognizant of the kids' behavior. The Conjuring's now iconic hide-and-clap technique was conceived in this very episode. The film follows a mother as she plays hide-and-seek in the basement, attracted there by the sound of disembodied clapping hands. Once there, she is tormented by an invisible force. The sequence was heavily staged for dramatic effect, but it was based on the genuine terror that the Perron family felt when Cindy was trapped. There was a haze between innocent play and otherworldly evil in their minds, and the video portrayed their feeling that the home was playing tricks on them. The event changed the way the Perron children saw their house for the rest of their lives. Things that were once safe started to seem dangerous, and games grew even riskier. Surprised by Cindy's entrapment? Not even skeptics who dismiss the home happenings as coincidental or the result of groupthink can explain it. Although it was entertaining for onlookers, the hide-and-clap action served as a sobering reminder to the Perrons of how blurry the line is between truth and fear. Despite vacating the old Arnold estate in 1980, the specter continued to follow. They may have left the house physically, but the mental and emotional burdens stayed behind. Paranormal phenomena, such as items being moved by invisible forces, rooms suddenly becoming chilly, bizarre nightmares, and a pervasive feeling of being watched persisted over the years, according to Andrea Perron and her sisters. The entity they had experienced in Harrisville wasn't limited to that one place. It had permeated their lives and was now there to stay, like a shadow that wouldn't go away no matter how far away they were. While filming 2012's The Conjuring, one of the most disturbing moments happened after the credits rolled. Despite the relative stillness, Andrea and her sisters were visiting the North Carolina film location when a strong gust of wind blew in, knocking over lighting equipment and stopping work. In Georgia, hundreds of miles apart, Carolyn Perron, who had opted not to travel, suffered a severe fall and fractured her hip at the very same moment. There was something uncanny about the time. The episode unsettled the family and strengthened their conviction that the specter was still at work. Rumors have it that Carolyn murmured, "Bathsheba does not want to be exposed," in response to hearing of the mayhem on set. Some parapsychologists have postulated that hauntings may be associated with specific people rather than specific places, and these accounts provide support for that hypothesis. Under this hypothesis, which goes by terms like post-traumatic hauntings and residual attachments, intense feelings and extended contact with supernatural entities can leave an energy and psychic mark on humans. Maybe the Perrons were just too exposed to events in a very visible edifice for too long, and it changed them irrevocably, if not psychologically, then spiritually. In the words of Dr. Barry Taff, "Sometimes it's not the house that's haunted, it's the people." The Perrons were not spared the haunting. Rather, it accompanied them throughout their whole lives. Even now, Andrea Perron opens up about the haunting and how it has affected her life. In her memoirs, House of Darkness, House of Light, and Interviews, she discusses not only the physical, but also the psychological effects of the tragedies she endured. Real or imagined, her narrative serves as a reminder that experiences with the supernatural can have profound psychological effects. One thing is certain: the Perron family's haunting never left the confines of the Conjuring house. It persisted in every step they took thereafter, regardless of whether the spirits actually pursued them or the horror merely imprinted on their life. For all intents and purposes, the old Arnold estate fell into a period of relative silence after the Perrons' departure. Norma Sutcliffe and Jerry Helfrich bought the house in 1987, oblivious to its rising notoriety. Enjoying the rural tranquility and antique elegance, they lived in relative peace for years. However, it all changed in 2013 when The Conjuring came out. It didn't take long for the house to start drawing in paranormal investigators, horror movie buffs, and adrenaline seekers. At various hours of the night, supporters would bang on the door and strangers would intrude. This once private mansion is now the object of widespread fascination. Modern media and popular culture have contributed to the evolution of the haunting, which was no longer limited to concerns of the supernatural. Norma originally denied that the house was haunted, but she later reported hearing voices that didn't seem to belong, lights that flickered, and footsteps that didn't seem to go anywhere. But she viewed these occurrences with skepticism, thinking they were just the normal groans of a house that was hundreds of years old. Instead of worrying about ghosts, she sued Warner Brothers for utilizing her house without permission, citing the real-world hazards of unwanted attention as her main concern. When her narrative was based on a combination of reality and fiction, it revealed the unintended implications of horror stories, which may lead to actual invasions of privacy. After the Heinzens, Corey and Jennifer, took ownership of the mansion, they fully embraced its spectral notoriety. The paranormal investigation duo Heinzens bought the land in 2019 with the intention of letting the public tour it. Taking advantage of the house's reputation for paranormal activity, they provided overnight stays, ghost tours, and live investigations. Despite their own experiences with paranormal activity, e.g., doors opening on their own and unusual noises, they marketed the location as a haven for mystery seekers. At this point, the Conjuring house had gone through a metamorphosis from private house to tourist attraction. This kind of place, which combines elements of entertainment, mythology, and history, has been increasingly popular with paranormal tourists in recent years. The Sleepless Unrest and similar documentaries ratcheted up the suspense by depicting a creepy heaviness in the atmosphere. Many tourists report that the terror they're experiencing is more psychological than supernatural. The mansion, which was formerly associated with family tragedies and urban tales, now sits at the crossroads of urban legends and contemporary tourism, proving that some ghosts don't go away. They just change form. When the Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training issued a stop work order in November 2024, the Conjuring house's tenure as a paranormal hotspot came to a sudden halt. Concerns over legal compliance and safety were heightened since the owners had neglected to maintain workers' compensation insurance since May. This is particularly concerning given the site's reputation for spooky charm and the huge number of visitors. All public tours, events, and overnight investigations came to an end shortly afterward when the Burrillville Town Council decided not to renew the house's entertainment license. The attraction had increased tourists, but it had also sparked trespassing, noise, and public disturbance complaints. The decision was made by local officials due to worries about regulations as well as increasing community opposition. The last guests were let out of the Conjuring house in December of last year. This section skillfully combined elements of horror, folklore, and tourism. Nobody knows what will happen to the house because it is still privately held. Seeing the show come to a close has brought relief to several of the townspeople. Some people were sad over the departure of a strange yet popular attraction. In the meanwhile, the legacy lives on. Fans continue to share videos, articles, and speculations about the location online. Some see it as mundane, while others find it utterly mystifying. Even if it is silent now, the home is nevertheless a powerful icon in American mythology, a place where reality, imagination, and terror are all intertwined. Even though the mystery has been solved, the events that transpired in that house continue to reverberate. Perhaps they always will, albeit it's doubtful. Stay still for the moment if this story made you shudder. Leave a comment with your thoughts, hit like to keep the light on, and subscribe for more historical horror stories straight out of the shadows. Click on the video that follows if you're feeling courageous enough. Down there, you'll find something.